particular rule has been abolished.
Okay.
People still keep on going on about the fact that it will be abolished, but I can't see that happening, because any government that actually tampers with either the 10-year rule or the 14-year rule, that government would also be tampering with that person's human rights to private life under the ECHR.
Okay.
And that I can't see the government trying to tamper with, because they will be challenged all the way through the courts if that should happen. So hence the reason why I feel that they will find it very, very difficult to abolish the 10-year rule or the 14-year rule.
I mean, the 14-year rule is straightforward. Does that mean that anybody who finds themselves in that position can just make their own application straight to the Home Office without people like you?
Well, if you know what you're doing, yes, there's no harm in you trying to do it yourself. But in my experience with so many immigration matters and cases, so many people do not know what they're doing when it comes to this kind of situation. Even I've dealt with so many of them in the past. I've dealt with even some people who've been in this country for so many years. There was a very particular gentleman, I can't mention names, I won't mention nationalities, but I've dealt with so many of them. This gentleman was in the UK for so many years. Very, very sharp, very intelligent, very educated man. He actually educated himself all through. Best qualified in his area of expertise, and but he did not have any papers, and he was misled, misguided, and misadvised by so many lawyers, taking money off him left, right, center. You know, not leading him on the right path. But as intelligent and as educated as this man is, and was at that point when he was actually trying to seek advice, he was still, dissembled really by so many lawyers who are not actually pointing him in the right direction. He still had to take advice. He could, I believe, he could have done it himself if he knew what he had to do, but he was still messed up by so many lawyers. So, in that respect, I would always advise people to seek legal advice on these matters. For a lawyer to actually talk you through what you need to be doing, to talk you through that very particular rule, which allows you to actually make the application for leave to remain based on the 14 years rule, and to then give you the assurance as to whether this application would be successful or the chances of that application being successful or not. You need guidance on that. So it's always advisable that you actually use a lawyer to make such applications.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's correct. Not just because obviously you're a lawyer, but I guess for most people, yes, you do need to seek legal advice. So at least you know where you stand. You know whether you're in or you're out. You know where you stand.
Another confusion people sometimes have is, and I think this is for a very main purpose. I think it's I'm not anti-government, and I don't really want to actually start bashing any government. But the UKBA, when you look at most of the application forms, they actually now put to the public for people to actually complete. They go out to encourage people that look, you could make this application yourself. You do not need the assistance or the advice of any lawyer. Do it yourself. It's as simple. Just complete the application form, pay the fee, right? And as you go through the guidelines, and you could actually make this application yourself. But I've come across hundreds of so many of such applicants. What would happen is they will make that application, and if they've made any slight mistake with any part of the application form, the same UKBA who actually encouraged these applicants, or applicants for that matter, to make such applications, they never actually give that applicant the opportunity to correct mistakes that person made, either in mistakes to do with the form, or mistakes not knowing what the guidelines truly and really mean, because some of these guidelines can be very, very complex. All they then just do is they then just throw that application back at you, take your money of maybe about £300 or £400 or £450. They don't refund. They won't refund the money.
Of course not.
Right? They've now refused the application, and you will then be left carrying a refusal letter, and if you are if you had used very good legal advice initially, maybe the rule they've actually used to refuse the application, you would have been advised as to how to deal with that very particular rule, or the application you've not completed properly, maybe you would have been advised on how to actually get around that very particular problem. But unfortunately, that's the case, and that's the situation with the UKBA. They want to refuse as many applications as possible if they can.
Of course, because it's in their interest to do that.
So, and the point is, they then hold on. They never actually refund money. And the ridiculous thing about the UKBA fees is every single year they increase that very particular fee. I was looking at some applications I made some years ago, 5-6 years ago, where making a settlement application then was only about £295.
Okay.
This was about 5-6 years ago. That same application, if you had to make the application today, a settlement application is about £970 in 4 or 5 years.
That's a lot.
Lots of money.
I mean, it's not, and that's nothing to do with inflation.
Nothing to do with inflation. And one other thing I also even find amazing is, you see, the people they're even charging this fee are people who are truly and really struggling.
Yes.
Maybe some of them are struggling to put funds together to even pay that for the application. They don't have a job. They are struggling to make ends meet. Maybe they've even borrowed that money from relatives, from friends. The UKBA doesn't care. They just charge. In fact, it goes up every year. It's automatic that it has to go up every year. But what really amazes me, though, is when you look at, take for instance, the kind of major applications British citizens or people who have indefinite leave to remain in the UK make in this country.
Okay.
Take for instance, if you apply for a renewal of a passport.
Yeah.
Right. They do not increase their passport's fee, you know, by possibly about 10, 15, 20% every year, and they've not done this for so many years. Even if there's going to be any increment at all, it will just be. I know at one stage it was about £68. It can't be more than 70 something pounds or 80 pounds now. And this is in a span of about 10, 12 years. So if you're not increasing your fees to do with things like driving license, passports, and so many applications people pay fees for, British citizens pay fees for this in the UK, what's different between such applications of citizens of the UK and immigrants? Is it the case that you are just using that fee structure? I'm not saying they should not charge, but are you actually using that fee structure to exploit, or what?
Or maybe to deter people from applying.
Or to deter people from applying.
Who knows? Who knows? But I mean, there are quite a lot of our people who are actually watching the program right now who have dependents, because there's some people that they have dependents and they're not sure what their right is, how to bring the dependents in, or even if the dependents are already here and they haven't got their stay have not been regularized. What advice do you give them?
There are two, but I will actually explain that particular aspect of the immigration law. I would categorize that aspect into three.
Okay.
Three areas. You have, in fact, four, I would say. You have the children. You have children, for instance, who have been in this country for so many years, and maybe they were brought in. That child came in as a visitor or came with a relative, and living with that relative for so many years, without any papers overstaying. You have elderly people.
Yes.
You got two types of elderly people. I mean, you got people who are in between, maybe 50 to 64, right?
Okay.
Then you got elderly people who are from 65
and above. Yeah.
Okay, you got that category. You also got the category of people who are in between the ages of 18 and 64. You understand? And when we look at these people, there's always a way any of these categories should be able to extend his or her leave in the UK after so many years. If you are